The night hung heavy over the city, thick with the scent of rain on asphalt and the distant hum of neon lights. Samantha ran, her bare feet slapping against the wet pavement, her body trembling with exhaustion and fear. She clutched her swollen belly, feeling the life inside her stir as if aware of the danger outside. She could hear the faint echo of her husband's footsteps behind her, the cruel laughter he often reserved only for her. Each step she took was a gamble, a desperate attempt to outrun a lifetime of terror. Her apartment had never felt like a home. Instead, it was a cage, filled with memories of raised fists and broken promises. Each argument escalated, spiraling into violence that left her bruised and terrified. The neighbors had long stopped asking questions, pretending not to hear the screaming, and the police had dismissed her pleas before. She had no one left to turn to, except for the one place most people would never dare, the HELLS Angels. The stories she had heard about them were enough to send shivers down her spine. Bikers with leather jackets, tattoos inked with symbols of loyalty and danger, men who feared nothing and answered only to their own code. Some whispered that they were criminals, others swore they were protectors in their own way, delivering justice where the law failed. Samantha, trembling, decided she had nothing to lose. If anyone could stop her husband, it would be them. Her hands shook as she dialed the number she had obtained from a friend of a friend. It rang twice before a gravelly voice answered. "This is Kane," the man said, voice low and commanding, carrying the weight of authority. Samantha's throat went dry. She had rehearsed what she would say 100 times, but now, words caught in her chest. "Please," she whispered, "you have to help me. I can't live like this anymore. He's going to kill me, or my baby." There was silence on the other end, a pause so heavy it felt like the night itself was holding its breath. Then Kane spoke, calm but sharp. "Tell me everything. Leave nothing out." And she did. Every beating, every insult, every moment of terror that had haunted her life. She spoke of the nights she stayed awake, listening for his return, afraid even to breathe too loudly. She told him about the neighbors who never came to help, the friends she had lost, the isolation that had become her world. By the time she finished, her voice was raw, and tears streaked her cheeks. Kane didn't interrupt. He simply listened, letting her pour out her fear, her pain, her desperation. When she finally fell silent, exhausted, he said one thing that would change everything: "You won't have to live in fear anymore." The words were simple, but they carried the weight of a promise backed by 100 men who lived by loyalty and action, not fear and threats. Samantha didn't fully understand how they would do it, but for the first time in years, hope flickered inside her chest. That night, the rumble began. It started as a faint vibration under her feet, almost like a distant storm approaching. Then the sound grew louder, metal against asphalt, engines roaring, leather jackets creaking as men on motorcycles formed a line outside her apartment building. Samantha peeked through the blinds and froze. Dozens of bikers, faces obscured by helmets and tattoos, had arrived. They didn't speak, they didn't ask questions. They just waited. Kane dismounted, towering and muscular, a figure who seemed carved from shadows and steel. He approached Samantha, placing a firm hand on her shoulder. "It's okay," he said. "You're safe now. We're not here to hurt you. We're here to make sure he never comes near you again." Samantha's heart pounded. She wanted to believe him, to trust these men who looked like they belonged in nightmares. But something in their eyes told her they meant what they said. She nodded, tears spilling freely now, relief mingled with disbelief. Over the next few days, the HELLS Angels watched, patrolled, and protected. They made sure her husband understood that any attempt to return would be met with consequences he couldn't imagine. They didn't speak of threats, they acted through presence, a silent code of intimidation and honor. Samantha watched from her window, the fear that had defined her life slowly ebbing away. One evening, Kane visited her apartment to check on her. "You don't have to thank us," he said, his tone rough but sincere. "Just live. That's all we ask. Live and protect your child." For the first time in months, Samantha slept without fear. She dreamed not of fists and screams, but of laughter, of the life growing inside her, and of a future where she could walk without looking over her shoulder. Outside, the city remained dangerous, unpredictable, cruel, but Samantha had discovered that courage could take many forms. Sometimes, it came roaring on two wheels, with men who lived by their own code of justice. And sometimes, it was enough to save not just a life, but the promise of a new one. As dawn broke over the skyline, golden light spilling into her apartment, Samantha pressed a hand to her belly. "We're going to be okay," she whispered. And for the first time, she truly believed it. The sun had barely risen when the first rumble of engines shook the quiet neighborhood. Samantha, now somewhat rested but still tense, pressed herself against the window. Outside, the HELLS Angels were already in position, their motorcycles glinting in the early morning light. The air seemed to vibrate with power, a silent warning that someone, was about to act. Kane, their leader, dismounted and turned to speak to Samantha, his leather-clad crew forming a protective circle behind him. "Stay inside," he said, voice steady, low, and commanding. "We're going to settle this. You don't need to do anything. Just watch, and know you're safe." Her heart pounded, a mix of fear and anticipation. This was it, the moment she had prayed for, the moment that could finally end years of abuse. Her husband, oblivious to what was coming, was still inside their old home, nursing his delusions of control. He had no idea that the world outside his walls had changed overnight. The bikers moved with precision. They didn't shout or make threats, they didn't need to. Their presence alone was enough to command fear. 60 men, clad in black leather, tattoos peeking through sleeves, engines growling like wild beasts, an army that demanded attention without a single word spoken. Kane stepped forward, his boots crunching on the gravel. He rang the doorbell. Samantha watched from her window, holding her breath as her husband opened the door, his smirk fading the moment he saw them. Who are you?" he stammered, trying to mask the tremor in his voice. Kane's eyes locked onto his. "This ends today," he said simply. No anger. No hesitation. Just authority. Her husband laughed nervously, thinking it was some sort of prank. But Kane didn't flinch. He didn't raise his voice. Instead, he gestured, and the bikers subtly shifted positions, surrounding the house, ensuring there was no escape. Fear replaced arrogance in her husband's eyes. He had underestimated them, and now he was beginning to understand the gravity of the situation. Samantha's husband tried to speak, to assert control, but the words died in his throat. Kane spoke again, slow and deliberate. "You have a choice. Leave. Never come back. Or face consequences you cannot imagine." The words were simple, but each syllable carried weight. The biker's silence amplified the threat. He looked around at the formidable men surrounding him, their tattoos telling stories of loyalty, their muscles hinting at strength honed over years of riding and survival. He realized, perhaps for the first time, that the law he had always feared might fail, but the world had other guardians. Minutes passed. The tension was thick enough to slice through the air. And then, with a trembling voice, he spoke. I'm leaving," he said, barely above a whisper. "I'll never come back." Kane didn't respond. Instead, he nodded slightly and motioned to the bikers. 2 men escorted Samantha's husband to his car, ensuring he left town immediately. The rest remained, watching to guarantee no one interfered. No one tried to reverse the inevitable. Samantha, watching from her window, felt an unfamiliar emotion swell inside her, relief mixed with disbelief. The fear that had shadowed her life for so long began to dissolve. She stepped outside, feeling the crisp morning air on her face. Kane approached her. "You're safe now," he said. "And we'll make sure it stays that way." Over the following weeks, the bikers continued to check in. They didn't just disappear once the threat was gone. Their presence, sometimes visible, sometimes discreet, served as a reminder that Samantha and her child were protected. Her husband never returned. The fear, the anxiety, the constant sense of being watched by danger, it all melted away. Samantha began to rebuild her life. She decorated the nursery, attended prenatal appointments without fear, and even allowed herself to laugh again. The transformation wasn't immediate, but with each day, each moment free from terror, she reclaimed pieces of herself that had been buried under years of abuse. One evening, months later, after the birth of her child, Kane visited her apartment once more. He held her newborn in his arms for a moment, then looked at Samantha with a mixture of seriousness and pride. "Take care of them," he said. "That's all we ask. Live. Be happy. Protect what matters most." Tears welled up in her eyes, but this time they were different, tears of gratitude, of hope, of rebirth. The HELLS Angels had not just protected her physically, they had restored her faith in justice, in courage, in humanity. The story of that night spread quietly among the city streets, whispered in biker bars and alleyways alike. It was not a story of violence, but of fear met with courage, of justice delivered where the law could not reach. And Samantha knew that sometimes, the world's heroes did not wear badges. Sometimes, they rode on two wheels, roaring louder than fear itself, carrying a code older than the streets they patrolled. Her life had changed. Her child's life had begun without the shadow of abuse. And Samantha, once a woman consumed by fear, had discovered her own strength. With allies who lived by honor, she learned that even the darkest nights could end with the promise of dawn. As she rocked her child to sleep, she whispered softly, "We're safe now. We can live, and we can dream." Outside, the engines of the Hells Angels faded into the distance, leaving behind only the echo of loyalty, justice, and an unspoken promise that they would always protect the innocent. Samantha smiled, tears falling gently, as she realized something profound. True courage sometimes comes from the most unexpected places. And justice, true justice, does not always wear a uniform. Sometimes, it rides in, roaring, fierce, and unyielding, ensuring that the world can be a little safer, one life at a time.